Hello, I'm Dr. Bond. Today we begin a series called BAFA, and I will explain this later. B-A-F-A, BAFA, pronounced BAFA, as if there's a double F, and other acronyms. If you've been listening to me for any length of time, you're probably not easily offended, but nonetheless, this talk is not for smaller children and people with the tender ears. There's a little bit of language in it. Enough said, as Polly Walnuts would say. An acronym, the dictionary tells us, is an abbreviation from the initial letters of a series of words, but it's pronounced as a word, such as radar, that's initials, or scuba for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, sonar, and you pronounce it to be an acronym, you pronounce those initials as a word. And, acronyms do speed up the economy of communication. Their law enforcement's loaded with them. There's nothing more loaded with them than organized medicine. Examples abound now. Initialism is something else again, where you'll just say the initials of the deals. FBI is coming up. But, they contribute to clarity, they contribute to doing things quickly, but they can create kind of a jargon of your profession or your trade that's not easily understood by an outside person all the time. Kingman Brewster was the head of Yale when the Doonesbury guy, Gary Trudeau, was there. And he said, this nice one, incomprehensible jargon, is the hallmark of a profession. So I'm just putting that out there. Here's initialism with John Gotti. I used to think FBI stood for Forever Bothering Italians, but now I know it stands for famous but incompetent. I remember when John said that, I thought that was a bad idea at the time, and it was. You don't want to goose those guys, but there he was, there he did, there it is. But that's an initialism. Radars out of the Second World War, so did snafu, so did FUBAR. Very different etymologies. Radar came out of World War II as they did that. Very possibly the most pleasant in the world elderly lady one time is talking about me about a hospital experience she had. And the word snafu came up like a dozen times. Seemed like half a dozen times in three sentences, more than you'd think. And I just wondered if she knew the etymology of what she's saying. And she asked me, and I said, have you ever thought about the word snafu there over and over? Why, it's just a word. Well, they're all just words, Well, it's explained. I tried to explain that to her just so she knew what she was saying. And like I would have explained that to my mother. And it was interesting to watch the stage with this lady where the penny kind of dropped, that she understood what that stand for, situation normal, and went from there. And I just said, this is, just a thing you ought to know if you're going to throw that word around. That's what that'll do. In organized medicine, acronyms are used by residents and medical students to make old-timers like me feel even more out of it. And it's grimly effective, and particularly under a barrage of them. I used to give that, now I take that. So, I just gave an example of that. We found a triple B with the usual full panel B. I'm totally making this up with nude IDK sub 2, and the attending thought to pass through. I'm just spinning that out of nowhere with acronyms from everywhere. But I just wanted, the whole thing went fakakta on the whole damn thing. The student who put us right at last, that's to make an old timer feel out of it. And here this guy is like me, bewildered old dude with a hat on. Proust said it, any mental activity is easy if it need not take reality into account. And as you get these acronyms together, you'll do that. Now, the actual word used to denote cool is in itself strongly dates. I'm sure that word is dating me now, where you want to be trendy, in, hip, avant-garde. The words themselves have got a very short shelf life. They not only go out of style, but they go into a sort of anti-style, where if you say the last word from last year, you're very, very negative out of it, and that goes badly. The very word you didn't use to denote that dates you in itself, and the more recent one is the worst one, and then it shades back up, and they might run in a circle. I haven't been through one. Lenin said it the best, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen, Vladimir Ilyich there. Now, the one a few weeks ago when I dictated that was FAFO, which means, I guess, fuck around and find out. What do it mean? That's what it means. Fuck around and find out. We had the President of the United States throwing that one around. I liked the sign. It was protected by FAFO. But once again, sitting on a park bench. He died of a stroke later on there, and he'd been shot by a girl named Fanny Kaplan, and that hastened his death. But there are decades where nothing happens as he's easing toward, taking care of the stroke, and weeks where decades happen. Now, as we take stock, this is a guy named Horatio Bottomley, and this is some just fluff he had out there, and this was to illustrate what this is going to be. Now, Horatio Bottomley founded what we call in the United States yellow journalism, tabloid journalism, and that technique proved to be enormously possible. And this is some things after the start of the First World War that Horatio Bottomley actually said that's rather soft verbs. George Orwell would criticize this to death. And Horatio is not a lovable guy. He'd been a swindler and some other things. He's going to come up later. But this was the style of journalism he preferred with what was called the Daily Mail. Kindness is loving people more than they deserve, by Joseph Joubert in the French Revolution. Now, Horatio wound up in jail. He pulled one last scam in the newspaper business and wound up in jail. In the British prisons of the time, you were put to work. You had things that you needed to do. And Horatio was sewing mailbags at this particular job that he had. And as he walked in, someone came to see him in jail as he is sewing this mailbag. And this is just a thing that he likes. Things used to be much more literate. And a story I like, he said, Horatio, are you sewing? And Horatio said, no, reaping. And so he was in jail for a reason. That's so nice to know somebody gets it. Sewing, Horatio, no, I'm reaping. Blah. This is the next guy, Lord Rothermere, that put the Daily Mail that Horatio Bottomley founded on the map. He's in the height of fashion for the late teens and very early 1920s. And the phrase I wanted to get, Lord Northcliffe here, formed this phrase. Salisbury said it the best. Using that tabloid style, he got to be the biggest press baron in England. But there is going to be BAFA. A guy named Lord Salisbury said that's by newsboys for newsboys. It wasn't intended to be a compliment. But there he is, Robert Gascoigne Cecil, Lord Salisbury. The Daily Mail was by newsboys for newsboys. It wasn't a deep thing of journalism, he thought. Wanted to hold it back. Bonaparte saying this, constitutions are fine as far as they go, but they need to be kept short and vague. And I wanted to get something that would be along those lines. Is this an idea whose time has come? I'm saying this for BAFA. Victor Hugo said it in the Hunchback of Notre Dame later on, and I got another Victor Hugo to cover, but there is no power on earth like that of an idea whose time has come. The concept is, of course, routinely brilliant for me, and we expect nothing less. Acronyms are popular with the young people, or whatever they're calling them these days, but what are we going to call this one? By newsboys, for newsboys. What do we get into this deal? This is Churchill talking about, he's talking to a widow, and he thought that the names of some World War II operations to which British troops had been assigned were a little too frivolous. And he said, solemn, somber, and deep thought should be given to these great and grim enterprises in which brave men had to hazard their lives. And I shall not be forced to explain to some young widow how the father of her children will not be coming home to something called bunny hug or switcheroo or something like that. So we come with by newsboys for newsboys, but we're going to have BAFA, pronounced BAFA as it's in there, which means by assholes for assholes. This is the new acronym, BAFA, by assholes for assholes. A moment of science, please. I just like that. As we do some science, we go on. As I try to research this, the asshole literature is far more varied and profound than one might at first think. The subject is now, as you can see, it's taught in the very beginning grades. A is for assholes. I mean, who can dispute that? I had a mild shock with that, but I thought you might as well start. We have here, Am I the Asshole? Fascinating, edifying accounts, odysseys of self-exploration, finally perhaps arriving at the truth, perhaps not. There are even guides on child rearing, clearly a voluminous and diverse field of study, how to raise kids who aren't assholes. I mean, this was around me and I didn't realize it. Now, bureaucracies and assholes are basically joined at the hip, always have been, and the correlation is so huge as to, as we say in science, correlation does not necessarily apply causation, but come on. It's everywhere. Here are these license plates coming out of that deal. The classic Kramer-Seinfeld, it's even in the classic folktales. I'm speaking of the one where Kramer wanted to get the New York license plate that said Ass Man, right on there, immortal. And there is a classic cameo of that woman standing there at the DMV with a classic DMV look and face, everything perfect. And she says, well, he's trying to explain this. He said, as far as the state of New York is concerned, Mr. Kramer, you are the ass man. Nothing else to say. So, a celebratory cake for Mr. Kramer. As in so many disciplines, God dwells in the details. A careful study of the asshole subspecies and subtypes, most illuminating. And we'll go into that later. And we will go, it's a key to more productive thinking in the field of assholeology, your guide to everyday assholes as we do this. They're now offering advanced fields of study, bachelor's, master's, and more advanced degrees. Say we're starting the pretentious arts, we're going to have the asshole arts. As you major in the pretentious arts. I had a good friend that tried to get me interested in opera. He was going to the opera all the time. I made what I consider to be a good faith attempt to try to learn to like the opera. And I went to several operas, read some books about them. And my good friend, wanting to outdo the opera crowd, would even lodge out-of-town opera singers when they came to town and doing this. When they visited our town to perform, he would put them up in his house. And he thought that was very, very très chic, and I thought it was count the spoons. I was in the Musicians Union in Chicago, and I'm familiar with my type and count the spoons. Don't put a lot of musicians in your house. Classroom study formally is being recommended of the asshole subject. And the field guide here will find to be very advisable, instructive, and it'll find to be, before you attempt field work, and rudimentary asshole classification is key. There are many subtypes of asshole. Now, certain behaviors have been closely studied, are very rich in anecdotal evidence and lore. You drive like an asshole. Now, this book, I'll just make a side, recommend. This book for an asshole. Christmas was just by us, but this book makes a terrific gift. Book for an asshole. Can't recommend it too highly. What shall we call our new field of study? Assholeology, or spelling it. Assology, lose the silent E. It's for us to say. Now, as Jeff Foxworthy always really wanted to say, you might be an asshole. Now, Shakespeare, what's that, 12th Night? Some are born great, some achieve greatness, others have greatness thrust upon them. Here we go, Penguin Books. Maybe you're an asshole. Now, there are many secretly suspect. There is always one asshole in the room, and I don't see one who is around. Many people will secretly suspect that this is true when they are the asshole. They hate it, fear it, and they will try to say everybody's like that in some way. They are in no way special, but their suspicion is not unfounded. Now, some people will embrace it. There was a bicycle race on the European tour. I'm trying to remember the name of the Frenchman that did this, but the asshole contest, and he was awarded the least likable guy on the tour by a vote by the bicyclists that did the Tour de France that year. And he was, unsurprisingly, a Frenchman, and they told him you won, basically the biggest asshole award, and he said, well, at least I won something. So, there you go. Embrace your inner asshole. A smaller number will not only embrace it, but treat it as an art form to be pursued, perfected, worked on. That can be a little scary. I believe I've run up against that a few times, and that's not something you want to run up against again. The art of being an asshole is someone's perfecting their work. I just love this phrase out of there. My friend George V. Higgins wrote The Friends of Eddie Coyle. It was darker than a carload of assholes. I mean, as I think about that, how dark can you get, A haiku, I wrote one time to just show that haiku is 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 3 syllables, and I did that to describe it all in just 7 syllables is very difficult. This was the one I thought up first. But the asshole haiku that I was able to think is effortless. and I think probably has a great deal of artistic merit. I'm just an asshole. May have been one all my life. 7. So what, and who cares? 5. As Queen Victoria said, you have delighted us long enough. Thank you very much. We'll delve into asshole study and BAFA study, by assholes, for assholes, BAFA, in the following segments. Thank you very much.